to share with you a way of thinking about self-care that might actually make it easier for you to actually do. Because if you're a highly sensitive person like me, you might find that engaging in self-care feels really hard for a whole bunch of different reasons. But some of those reasons will kind of revolve around this idea of having to earn your self-care. And so I want to offer you a different perspective that will hopefully help you to see self-care in a very different light. So welcome to the podcast, SelfKind, with me, your host, Erica Webb. I am a registered counsellor, somatic exercise coach, yoga teacher, and a highly sensitive person. And this podcast is for you if you are also a highly sensitive person, neurodivergent, living in a world that is perhaps a little noisy, a little complicated, and sometimes just not all that kind to our highly sensitive nervous systems. And like I said, I want to talk today about a different perspective on self-care that might be a brand new way of thinking about this for you. Maybe not, but I hope that it will help you to think about it in some new ways. So self-care is something that we talk about a lot in the wellbeing industry. I have literally built my entire career on this idea of self-care. I've been teaching yoga for 15 years. I now work as a counsellor as well. And so often when people come to me in a counselling capacity, what they're really seeking support with is like how to actually do self-care. That's what it usually boils down to. Okay, so what is this perspective shift? The perspective shift is thinking about self-care as a way of showing your brain, your body, and your nervous system that you are actually safe. So this is not a new idea, right? That is literally what we're doing when we do self-care, but it's probably not the way that we often talk about it or think about it. We are nervous systems, right? We're nervous systems with other human parts, and our nervous system is constantly scanning our environment for signs that we are safe or signs that we are under threat. And the honest truth is that when you are a highly sensitive person, those signals of threat can come pretty fast and hard because you're processing a lot of information, you're processing it deeply, and it can be easy for the overwhelm that can come with that depth of processing to trigger a response that like maybe something is wrong. So when we think about self-care as a way of showing our nervous system that we are safe, that can change the way that we think about what we actually do, right? So often we talk about self-care as being things like going and getting a massage or going and taking a yoga class. And those things can be really fabulous, of course, and absolutely go and do them. But it's also really self-caring in the moment to give evidence to your brain, your body, your nervous system, that you are safe, or at least safe enough. And so this is where self-care can become something that we very much like live and breathe. It's something that we do not just at the end of the day when we have an hour to devote to a practice. It's something that we actually bring into our day-to-day. So I want to give you a few different examples of this. I've been talking a lot about this recently with one-on-one counseling clients. And so a few examples of my own that I will share, not other people's, but I want to share some examples that I've used to help other people sort of see this concept. So one of the things that I have recently been talking about is this idea of like, how do I create visual cues of safety in my environment? Now in the background, if you're watching the video, you won't see this obviously if you're just listening, but in the background of this video, you can see a big Monstera plant. Now, the Monstera plant in the video, I'm pointing in completely the wrong direction, but that's okay. The Monstera plant in the video needs a lot of water and it needs to be restaked, but let's just ignore that for a second and focus on the fact that I fill my space with indoor plants and books. Now, I like the way they look, but if we think about this from a self-care perspective, those sorts of objects also help me to feel safe, content, happy in my space. Pictures on the walls, for example, can do a similar thing. The possessions that we keep around us can do a similar sort of thing. The people that we choose to spend time with can make us feel safer, more like we belong, or they can have the opposite effect and make us feel as though we are being judged or whatever. So how we adjust our spaces can be in the service of self-care. So that's just one example, right? Like, what am I doing in my environment that helps me to feel more safe? Another example of that for highly sensitive people, as I'm recording this, I've got bright lights in front of me, right? My nervous system doesn't love that. I am very, like, from the point of view of sensitivity, sensory sensitivity, lights, sounds, all of that, probably really high up there on the list for me. And so bright lights in my eyes is not my favorite. And even as I'm talking, I can feel that I kind of want to talk really fast. And I'm sure part of that is because I'm like a deer in the headlights, right? Not my favorite environment, but necessary for filming. Now, if I was doing this all day, every day, that would be a problem, right? That would be a problem because my nervous system is going to interpret this as being like a load on the system that becomes threatening, right? Because if I'm using up my resources having to deal with that, then I don't have as many resources left over to navigate other things. And so if I was living in an environment with really bright lights all the time, or something shining in my face, or like a noise that was really constant, if there was something that I could do to adjust that, to make that less or go away altogether, then that would be very self-caring, because it would be a lessening of a threat and an increasing of a sign of safety for my system. So they're just a couple of examples, but this is a really different way, potentially, of thinking about self-care. And I want you to think of it as being almost like the analogy of scales, right? So as we move through life as highly sensitive people, we are exposed to things all the time that we are trying to take in and process and determine our safety, our okayness in the world. And let's be honest, right now the world is giving us a lot of signs that things are not okay. And so our sensitive nervous systems, our sensitive hearts, our sensitive bodies are not going to miss that, right? We are very well aware of it. And so now what does self-care look like? It looks like trying to add some weight to the side that says, I'm actually safe, right? Because all of the evidence that I'm not is kind of like tipping the scales. And so we want to start adding evidence that actually I'm okay, right? Even if it's just in this moment right now. And that's why I really want to encourage you to start thinking about self-care and see if that changes how willing and able you are to show up for it. Especially now as I'm talking about these sort of simple adjustments that we can make. Those things are self-care. It doesn't require you to carve out a full hour of time, right? But when you can, absolutely, let's do it. But that is not the only way. And so what's probably evident from those examples is that self-care can work in a couple of different ways. It can either help us to reduce signs in the environment or even in ourselves of threat, right? Threat to our well-being, threat to our safety, even threat to our sense of self. And it can help us to introduce evidence or point out evidence of safety and okayness and belonging and well-being. So we can be doing one or the other or both with our self-care practices. And I said something there that is worth like me rewinding briefly to talk about. I said we can adjust things in our environment, right? So that might be the massage, it might be dimming the lights, it might be adding the plants, putting the picture on the wall, it might be spending time with people that we love, all of those things. But it might also be adjusting the way that we talk to ourselves, because we are either contributing to our sense of safety or our sense of threat by the way that we speak to ourselves. And this is a game changer, because when we can create an environment of safety, belonging, inclusion for ourselves in the way that we speak to ourselves in our head, then we are not giving more weight to that evidence of like there is so much threat in the world that is, coming for me. We're actually adding weight to the side that says, I am okay. And so self-care can be so much of how we speak to and about ourselves. I want to emphasize that one with like 15 underlines, right? It will change your life if you can learn how to speak more kindly, be more compassionate towards yourself, because you're either contributing to a sense of I am not safe, or you are contributing to this sense of there is a sign that I am okay. So I want to give you a little practice that you can do. This is like a journaling practice, a writing practice that you can do around this idea. But before we do that, I want to mention that this is something that we do inside Soma Home. So I'm like giving you a little piece of Soma Home in this episode, and I want to just take a minute to talk about Soma Home before I share it with you, because if you are enjoying this way of thinking about self-care and you're a highly sensitive person and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so ready to feel safer in my own skin, then Soma Home might be just the thing that you're looking for. So Soma Home is my 8-week online program for highly sensitive people. It is starting on the 7th of May, 2025, and registration is open now. So it's an online group program, and we meet weekly live on Zoom to go through a whole bunch of different topics around being highly sensitive, finding this sense of safety within our own skin, and kind of going through this self-inquiry process that helps us to break down some of the invisible walls and patterns that are in our way at the moment from allowing us to be compassionate, kind, and respectful towards our sensitivity, ourselves, our bodies. So we do the live Zoom call every week. And as well as doing that inquiry, we also work with somatic exercise practices, which is really about, if we come back to the topic of this week's podcast episode, helping our body feel more safe. Because when our body feels more safe, wonderful things happen in our mind. When our mind can kind of find some safe footing as well, because we're being kinder to ourselves, we're being more compassionate towards ourselves, that filters down into our body and how we feel. So we're really working in Soma Home with that relationship between both. It's the body, it's the mind, it's how they work together, which is where we need to focus. Because if we're only doing the mind stuff, we can kind of miss all of this beautiful wisdom that our body is sharing. And we want to be really paying attention to both. So if you would like to find out more about Soma Home, you can head to my website. I will pop a link into the show notes, but it's ericawebb.com.au/soma-home. SOMA-HOME. Registration is closed on the 2nd of May, I believe it is, and we start on the 7th of May. So I would love, love, love to see you in there. All right, so let's talk about the little practice that you can do around this idea of self-care helping you to feel more safe. And what this really is just a list, right? I'm just going to invite you to make a list. And it's a list of things that you can do that support you to find a sense of enough safety to feel a little bit more grounded, present, and available to the moment. So I'm going to give you a few examples. And like I said, if you join us for Soma Home, we'll go much, much more deeply into this. But a few examples might be, I feel safer when I pause and take 5 slow breaths. I feel safer when I take the time to pause and just like give myself 3 minutes before I proceed with whatever task is causing me to, feel a sense of urgency and panic. It makes me feel safer when I can just gather my thoughts. It makes me feel safer when I am with this particular person, or I remind myself that that person has my back. I feel safer when I spend 20 minutes doing yoga every day. I feel safer, I feel more connected when I take the time to drink my morning coffee without distraction. I feel safer when I don't spend 24 hours doom scrolling on my phone, right? So this list can grow as you develop more tools, you come across more things that you're like, oh, yeah, that is a beautiful sign of safety for my body. It's a beautiful sign of safety for my mind. It's a beautiful sign of safety for my nervous system. Remember that we're just trying to tip the balance, because sometimes we can't get rid of the things that are making us feel vulnerable. If you think about the things that we see on the news, we can't make that disappear. We can't change immediately right now the realities that are present in our environment. But we can tip the balance of just introducing some things that help us to notice, oh, I'm safe right now. I'm safe in this moment. And that is a really powerful place then to be able to move from. And so the key here, what I want to finish off with, is an important word that goes with this idea of safety. And that is, how do I feel safe enough? Because when we are highly sensitive, and when we are highly sensitive in a world like the one that we live in, sometimes it's going to be just enough safety, right? Enough safety so that we can do whatever is next. Enough safety so that we don't slip into overwhelm, over and over and over again. Enough safety that we can take a deeper breath. And so it doesn't have to be 100% safety, because if we're waiting for that, it's going to take a lot more self-care and a lot of things that are probably outside of our control. But can I find enough, right? It's a beautiful concept. I hope that that is a really helpful way for you to think about self-care. I know it has been really powerful for me. And, you can ask yourself that simple question, like, what in this moment? What could I do in this moment? What could I notice? What could I say to myself? What could I do that would support me to feel a little safer? Head over to my website via the show notes if you like to check out more information about Soma Home. I would absolutely love to have you in there with me. We get started on the 7th of May. If you have any questions, you can come and find me. The honest truth is it literally is just me, right? It's just me. So I will answer your emails. I will answer your questions. This is not a huge production behind the scenes. I am doing it all. And so if you've got questions about Soma Home, if you've got questions for the podcast, please do come and find me either over on Instagram at ericawebb_selfkind, or send me an email, erica@ericawebb.com.au. All right. Until next time, friends, keep being kind to yourselves. Look for those opportunities to, enhance your sense of well-being, safety, okayness in the moment. And I will look forward to talking with you again really soon.